My name is Elena, and if you looked at my life from the outside, say, if you scrolled through my Instagram feed or saw our holiday cards, you would have thought I had it all. I was the woman who had balanced the impossible equation. I had the high-powered career in luxury real estate, selling penthouses to people who had more money than God. I had the beautiful suburban home with the wraparound porch. And I had Greg. Greg was the kind of husband other women envied. He was charming, he was handsome, and most importantly, he was the primary parent. While I was flying to Miami or closing deals in Manhattan, Greg was the one making the gluten-free pancakes. He was the one driving the carpool. He was the one who held down the fort. "You're building our empire, Elle," he used to tell me, kissing me on the forehead before I dragged my suitcase out the door. "Don't worry about us. I've got the boys." I believed him. God, I wanted to believe him. Because believing him meant I didn't have to feel the crushing weight of guilt every time I missed a soccer game or a bedtime story. But I'm telling you this story today because I learned the hard way that sometimes the perfect arrangement is just a perfectly constructed lie, and the person you trust to protect your children might be the very person they need protection from. Before we go any further into the darkness of what I found in my own home, I need you to do something for me. Take a deep breath in through your nose, hold it, and let it out. And please, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from right now? What city? What time is it there? I ask because when I was going through this, I felt so isolated. I felt like the only woman in the world who was failing her family. Knowing that you are here, listening from any part of the world, brings me so much comfort. It reminds me that we are a sisterhood of survivors. And if stories about intuition and protecting what matters most speak to you, please subscribe to Jessica's Stories Vault. Don't walk this road alone. Join us. It started with a feeling. You know that feeling? It's not a thought. It's not something you can write down on a pros and cons list. It's a vibration. A low hum in your spirit that says, something isn't right. For me, the hum started on a Tuesday morning in October. I was packing for a 10-day trip to Chicago. It was a huge listing, a historic mansion that was going to make my year in commissions. I was rushing around the bedroom, throwing blazers and heels into my suitcase, my mind already on the flight schedule. Greg was in the kitchen making breakfast. I could smell the bacon. I could hear the clatter of plates. It sounded normal. Then my son walked in. Leo was 7 years old then. He was light. That's the only way I can describe him. He was a boy made of sunshine and curiosity. He loved to draw. He carried this battered old blue sketchbook with him everywhere he went. He would draw anything, the dog sleeping, the mailman, a leaf he found on the driveway. His drawings were always explosions of color. Bright yellows, chaotic oranges, deep blues. "Hey, buddy," I said, snapping my suitcase shut. "Come give Mom a hug before I go." Usually Leo would run at me. He would tackle me, but that morning he stopped in the doorway. He was holding his blue sketchbook against his chest like a shield. His knuckles were white. "Leo?" I asked, softening my voice. "Honey, what's wrong?" He took a small step back. It was subtle. If I hadn't been his mother, I might not have seen it, but I saw it. He flinched. Just a tiny twitch in his shoulders, like he was expecting. What? A shout? A blow? "I don't want you to go," he whispered. He didn't look at me. He was staring at his socks. "I know, baby, I know." I sighed, walking over and kneeling in front of him. "But this is a big job, and when I come back, we're going to buy that new bike you wanted, remember?" I reached out to touch his arm, and his muscles were rock hard. He was tense, rigid. "Does Dad know you're leaving?" he asked. "Of course Dad knows," I said, confused. "Dad drove me to the airport last time. Why?" Leo finally looked up at me, and what I saw in his eyes made my stomach drop. It wasn't just sadness. It was fear. It was a calculating, adult kind of fear. "Mom," he said, his voice barely a breath. "Don't tell him I asked." Don't tell him you asked, what? That I asked you to stay. Before I could press him, Greg appeared in the doorway. He was smiling. He was wearing his world's best dad apron. He looked like safety. He looked like home. Everything okay in here? Greg asked. His voice was smooth, like warm honey. Leo jumped, physically jumped. He immediately plastered a fake smile on his face, a smile that didn't reach his eyes, and turned to his father. "Yeah, Dad," Leo chirped. "Just saying bye to Mom." The change was instantaneous. It was like watching a robot switch programs. My chaotic, emotional 7-year-old had just performed a perfect scene of a happy child. My heart started to hammer against my ribs. A cold sweat broke out on the back of my neck. Why was my son acting like a little actor? Why was he performing for his father? "All right, champ," Greg said, walking over and ruffling Leo's hair. Leo stood perfectly still, letting the hand mess up his hair, but I saw his eyes squeeze shut for a second. "Go finish your eggs. Mom has a plane to catch." Leo ran out of the room. He didn't look back at me. I stood up, facing my husband. "Greg, is he okay? He seems jumpy." Greg laughed. He walked over to me and wrapped his arms around my waist. He smelled like coffee and expensive cologne. "Elena, stop. You're projecting." "Projecting?" "You feel guilty about leaving," Greg said softly, kissing my temple. "So you're looking for reasons to feel bad." "Leo is fine. We had a great weekend. He's just a kid, Elle. Kids are weird. Stop looking for trouble where there isn't any." He made it sound so logical. "You feel guilty?" "Yes, I did. I always felt guilty." "You're looking for trouble." Maybe I was. Maybe I was the problem. Maybe my ambition was making me paranoid. I let him kiss me goodbye. I let him load my suitcase into the Uber. I waved at them from the window as the car pulled away. But as we drove toward the airport, that knot in my stomach, that intuition, tightened. It felt like a physical stone sitting in my gut. I opened my purse to get my phone, and my hand brushed against something rough. I pulled it out. It was a piece of paper. Leo must have slipped it into my bag when I wasn't looking. It wasn't one of his usual drawings. There was no sun. There were no bright colors. It was done in heavy black charcoal pencil. It was a drawing of our house, but the windows were blacked out. And in the yard, there was a stick figure of a little boy. The boy had no mouth, just a smooth blank space where his smile should have been. And standing over the boy was a large looming shadow. I stared at that drawing as the highway rushed by. My hands started to shake. I wanted to tell the driver to turn around. I wanted to go back and kick the door down, but I didn't, because Greg's voice was in my head. "You're crazy. You're projecting. He's fine." So I got on the plane, and that was the biggest mistake of my life. Because what was happening in that house, what was happening to the boy with no mouth, was worse than anything my guilty conscience could have invented. I thought the silence in the drawing was just a metaphor. I didn't know that silence was the rule. And I didn't know that by the time I landed in Chicago, Greg would have already found the sketchbook Leo tried to hide. The distance between Chicago and New York is roughly 700 miles, a 2-hour flight, not far in the grand scheme of things. But sitting in that pristine beige hotel room on the 40th floor, looking out at a city of strangers, I felt like I was on a different planet. 700 miles is far enough to feel helpless. It is far enough that if your child screams, you won't hear it. I spent the first 2 days of the trip going through the motions. I put on my power suit. I walked through marble hallways. I shook hands with investors, and I smiled until my face hurt. I was good at my job. I sold the dream of a happy home to people, all while a sinking feeling in my gut told me my own home was rotting from the inside out. Every time my phone vibrated, I jumped. My heart would do that frantic little flip, you know the one, where you're expecting bad news. But the bad news didn't come. That was the torture of it. The silence was the torture. I called home every evening at 6 p.m. sharp. That was our routine. But this time, the routine felt scripted. "Hey, babe," Greg answered on the second night. The video call connected, and there he was, sitting on our living room couch. He looked relaxed. He had a glass of red wine in one hand. The house behind him was immaculate. Too immaculate. "How's the Windy City?" "It's windy," I said, trying to keep my voice light. I was scanning the background of the video, looking for clues. "Where's Leo?" "Leo, Mom's on the phone," Greg called out. Leo walked into the frame. He didn't run. He walked. He was wearing his favorite dinosaur pajamas, but he looked stiff. His shoulders were hunched up toward his ears. "Hi, Mom," he said. His voice was flat, monotone. "Hi, my love." I pressed my face close to the screen, searching his eyes. "How are you? Are you having fun with Dad? Did you guys go to the park?" Leo's eyes flicked to the side, just for a microsecond. He looked at Greg before he looked back at the camera. "Yes," Leo said. "We went to the park. It was fun." "Did you bring your sketchbook?" I asked. "Did you draw anything cool?" The air in the call seemed to freeze. Leo's little hands clenched at his sides. I saw panic flare in his eyes, genuine, raw panic. Greg stepped in smoothly, draped an arm around Leo's shoulder. I watched Leo flinch under the weight of his father's arm. "Actually, Elle," Greg said, his voice dropping to that reasonable, teacher-like tone he used. "We decided to take a break from the drawing for a few days. We're focusing on structure this week. Focus and discipline." Leo was getting a little too distracted with his head in the clouds. "Weren't you, buddy?" Leo nodded mechanically. "Yes, too distracted." "We're working on being present," Greg smiled at me, swirling his wine. "Building character." I felt a cold flush rise up my neck. "Greg, he's 7. He loves drawing. Why would you take that away?" "I didn't take it away, Elena. Don't be dramatic. We're just balancing his hobbies. You'd know that if you were here, but since you're busy conquering the real estate market, you have to trust my judgment on the ground, right?" There it was, the jab. The subtle reminder that I was the one who left. I was the one who abandoned them. He used my own sacrifice as a weapon to silence me. I just think he needs his creative outlet," I stammered, losing my ground. "He needs a father who teaches him focus," Greg countered, his smile not wavering. "Anyway, we have to go. It's 1900 hours, bedtime protocol." 1900 hours? Protocol? Since when did we use military time for bedtime? "Wait, let me say goodnight." "Love you, babe. Go kill it tomorrow," Greg said. The screen went black. I sat on the edge of that hotel bed, staring at my reflection in the dark phone screen. My hands were shaking. "Ladies, I have a question for you, and I want you to be honest with me in the comments. Have you ever let a man, or anyone really, talk you out of your own intuition because they sounded so calm and you felt so emotional? Have you ever let someone convince you that you were the crazy one, just because they had a rational explanation for everything?" I sat there and I told myself, "Elena, stop it. You are tired. You are stressed. Greg is a good father. He's just being strict because Leo is growing up." I tried to use logic to untie the knot in my stomach, but the knot wouldn't loosen. That night, I couldn't sleep. The hotel air conditioning was too loud. The sheets were too stiff. I tossed and turned until 2 a.m. I needed to hear his voice. I just needed to hear Leo breathing. I knew Greg kept the landline in the kitchen. If I called the landline, it might wake them up, but I didn't care. I needed to know they were okay. I dialed the number. It rang. And rang. And rang. Finally, someone picked up, but they didn't say hello. The phone must have been knocked off the hook, or maybe Greg answered and fumbled it. For a few seconds, the line was open, but nobody was speaking to me. I pressed the phone against my ears so hard it hurt. "Hello?" I whispered. "Greg?" Silence. And then I heard it. It wasn't a scream. It wasn't a cry. It was a rhythmic, mechanical tick, 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 like a kitchen timer. And over the sound of the ticking, I heard Greg's voice, but it wasn't the voice he used on FaceTime. It was a voice devoid of all warmth. It sounded like ice cracking. "Reset," he said. Just that one word. Then I heard a soft thud, like small knees hitting a hardwood floor. "Please, Dad," a small voice whimpered. It was barely audible, breathless, like he had been running or holding a heavy weight. "My arms hurt." "Pain is weakness leaving the body," Greg's voice said, calm, psychotic. "Reset. The timer starts when you stop crying. Click." The line went dead. I sat there in the silence of my hotel room, the phone still pressed to my ear. The blood drained from my face. My entire body went numb, and then, a second later, it caught fire. "Pain is weakness leaving the body." He was quoting a Navy SEAL slogan to our 7-year-old son at 2 a.m. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't projecting. I wasn't an over-emotional mother. My husband was torturing our son. I didn't pack my clothes. I didn't check out. I grabbed my purse. I grabbed my keys, and I ran for the elevator. I didn't care about the job. I didn't care about the commission. I was going home, and God help him when I got there. But as I sat in the taxi speeding toward O'Hare Airport, dialing my sister's number with trembling fingers, I realized something that made me nauseous. Greg was smart. He was terrifyingly smart. If I just burst in the door screaming, he would spin it. He would say I was hysterical. He would say Leo was having a nightmare. He would hide the evidence. I needed to see it. I needed undeniable proof, because a monster who can wear a mask that perfect is the most dangerous kind of monster there is, and I knew exactly how to catch him. I remembered the birthday present I had bought for Greg last year, a nanny cam for the dog that he never set up, and I realized with a jolt of adrenaline that I still had the remote access codes on my phone. I have never prayed harder than I did on that flight from Chicago to New York. I wasn't praying for a safe landing. I wasn't praying for peace. I was praying that I was wrong. I was begging God to let me be the crazy, hormonal, overreactive woman that Greg always said I was. Please let it be a misunderstanding. Please let it be a game I just didn't understand. But deep down, in the pit of my stomach where the truth lives, I knew. I paid $40 for the in-flight Wi-Fi. My fingers were trembling so badly I mistyped my credit card number 3 times. The passenger next to me, a businessman in a gray suit, glanced over and asked if I was okay. I think I looked like I was having a heart attack. I couldn't even speak. I just nodded and turned away, staring at the little blue loading circle on my phone screen. I remembered the Furbo, the dog camera I had bought for our golden retriever, Buster, 2 Christmases ago. Greg had laughed at it. He called it a waste of money. He unplugged it constantly because he said the light annoyed him. But I had plugged it back in behind the potted fern in the living room right before I left. Just habit. Just a mother's instinct trying to leave an extra set of eyes behind. The app loaded. The screen flickered from black to a grainy night vision gray. My heart stopped. The living room was dim, lit only by the street lamps outside filtering through the blinds. But the camera angle was perfect. It caught the sofa, the coffee table, and the rug, where Leo usually played with his Legos. At first I didn't see them. The room looked empty. Then, movement. Greg was pacing. He wasn't wearing his dad clothes, the soft sweatpants or the t-shirts. He was wearing his running gear, tight, efficient, military-looking. He was holding something in his hand. It was the blue sketchbook, Leo's lifeline. And there, kneeling on the rug in the center of the room, was my son. He wasn't playing. He was in a position that I can only describe as a stress position. Knees on the hardwood, not the rug. Hands behind his head, back straight. He was shaking. Even on the grainy phone screen, I could see the vibrations of his small body. I put my hand over my mouth to stifle a sob. The businessman next to me put his headphones on, uncomfortable with my unraveling. I turned the volume up on my phone, pressing the speaker against my ear. "This is trash," Greg said. His voice was calm. That was the scariest part. He wasn't yelling. He sounded like he was discussing the weather. "We don't create trash in this house, Leo. We create excellence." "What is this?" He held up a drawing. It was a picture of me. I recognized it. Leo had drawn it last week. Me, with big yellow hair and a smile that took up half my face. It's Mom," Leo whispered. His voice was so thin it broke my heart into a million pieces. "It's messy," Greg corrected. "Look at the lines. Look at the lack of discipline. It's chaotic. Do we like chaos, Leo?" "No, sir," Leo whimpered. "Then fix it." Greg ripped the page out of the book. The sound of that paper tearing was louder than the roar of the jet engines outside my window. He crumpled the drawing of me into a tight ball and dropped it on the floor in front of Leo. "We are going to purge the weakness," Greg said. "Next page." He ripped another one. And another. "Please, Dad," Leo begged, tears streaming down his face now. "Please, not the dragon one. I worked really hard on it." "Attachment is weakness," Greg said, ripping the dragon drawing in half. "You are too soft, Leo. Your mother has made you soft. She fills your head with this fairy tale nonsense because she's not here to do the hard work. She leaves, and I have to clean up the mess. I have to build a man out of this mush." I watched, frozen in horror at 30,000 feet, as my husband systematically destroyed the one thing my son loved most in the world. He didn't just tear the paper, he was tearing apart Leo's spirit. He was teaching him that love is conditional, that creativity is shameful, and that his mother, his protector, was the cause of his suffering. I felt a snap inside my brain. It wasn't a snap of insanity. It was the snap of clarity. For years, I had walked around on eggshells, wondering if I was too much, wondering if I worked too hard, wondering if I was a bad wife. I had let Greg gaslight me into believing that his controlling nature was just high standards. I had let him convince me that my intuition was just anxiety. But looking at that screen, the fog lifted. I wasn't crazy. I was right. I had been right for years. I was married to a monster who got off on power, who waited until the door closed to take his mask off. I took a screenshot. Then I hit screen record. I recorded every single second of that torture. I recorded the ripping paper. I recorded Leo's sobbing. I recorded the way Greg nudged Leo with his foot when he slumped over from exhaustion. I recorded it all. And as the little red timer on my screen counted up, my fear began to evaporate. It was replaced by something cold, something hard, something dangerous. The sad wife died on that plane. The mama bear woke up, and she was ready to burn the world down. Ladies, I want to ask you something, and I need you to really think about it. If you saw this happening on your phone screen, if you were trapped in a metal tube in the sky, hours away from home, watching someone destroy your child, what would be your first move? Would you call the police immediately? Would you call a neighbor? Or would you do what I did? Would you stay silent, collect the evidence, and plan the kill? I almost called the police right there from the plane. My finger hovered over the dial pad. But then I looked at the screen again. Greg was smart. If the police showed up now, he would say Leo was being punished for drawing on the walls. He would say the stress position was yoga. He would hide the sketchbook. The police would come, look around, see a clean house and a calm white man in a nice neighborhood, and they would leave. And then he would punish Leo for it. No, I couldn't risk a check-in. I needed a removal. The plane wheels touched the tarmac at JFK. I didn't wait for the seatbelt sign to turn off. I stood up. I grabbed my bag. I pushed past the businessman. I walked through that terminal with a singular focus. I wasn't going home to fight with my husband. I wasn't going home to ask for a divorce. I was going home to extract my son. But as I sat in the Uber, watching the familiar streets of my neighborhood roll by, I realized the terrifying truth. I was entering a war zone. I was walking into a house with a man who thought pain was weakness leaving the body. I looked at the visual of my house coming up on the GPS. It used to be my sanctuary. Now, it looked like a trap. The lights were off, it was silent, and I knew that whatever happened in the next hour would determine whether my son survived his childhood or was broken by it. I checked my phone one last time. The camera feed was black. He had unplugged it. I was flying blind. The Uber driver pulled up to my curb at 1:15 a.m. The house was completely dark. It looked like a tomb. I stood on the front porch, my hand hovering over the doorknob. My key felt heavy, like a weapon in my palm. Inside that house was the man I had married, the man I had shared a bed with for 10 years. And inside that house was a monster who ripped up drawings and put my son in stress positions. I had to become an actress. That was the only way this was going to work. If I walked in there screaming, Greg would shut down. He would gaslight. He might get violent. I needed to be smarter than him. I needed to be the submissive wife he wanted, just for one more hour. I took a deep breath, pushing the rage down into the soles of my feet. I unlocked the door. The house smelled like bleach, strong chemical bleach. I walked into the foyer, dropping my bag intentionally loudly. "Greg? Honey?" I heard movement upstairs, heavy footsteps. Then, Greg appeared at the top of the landing. He was shirtless, wearing just his pajama bottoms. His hair was tousled. He looked sleepy and soft, a terrifying contrast to the drill sergeant I had heard on the phone. "Elena?" He squinted against the hall light. "What are you doing here? Is everything okay?" I forced a smile. I made my shoulders slump. I played the part of the exhausted, defeated woman. "I got sick," I lied. My voice trembled and I let it. "I got to the hotel and I couldn't do it. I felt awful. I just wanted to be home." Greg walked down the stairs. Every step he took toward me, my skin crawled. My instinct was to run, to grab a knife from the kitchen, to do something. But I stayed frozen. He reached me and pulled me into a hug. His skin was warm. He smelled like mint toothpaste. "Oh, babe," he cooed, rubbing my back. "You poor thing. You've been working too hard. I told you this job was draining you." It took every ounce of willpower I possessed not to vomit. I was hugging the man who had tortured our son hours ago. I rested my head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. Thump, thump, thump. It was steady, calm. How could his heart be so calm? "I just need to sleep," I whispered into his chest. "I need to check on Leo first." Greg stiffened, just slightly. "He's out cold, Elle. Don't wake him up. We had a big day." "I won't wake him," I promised, pulling away. Just a peek. I walked up the stairs, feeling Greg's eyes drilling into my back. He was watching me, assessing me, wondering if I knew. I pushed open Leo's door. The room was dark, but the moonlight filtered through the blinds. Leo was curled up in a tight ball in the center of his bed, the duvet pulled up over his head. I tiptoed over and peeled back the cover. My hand flew to my mouth. He was sleeping in his street clothes. He hadn't even changed into pajamas. And his face was streaked with dried tears and snot. His little hands were clenched into fists, tucked under his chin. I wanted to scoop him up right then and run, but I couldn't, not yet. I needed the go bag. I needed the car keys. I needed to make sure Greg didn't follow us. I kissed Leo's forehead. He flinched in his sleep, whimpering a soft, "I'm sorry." I backed out of the room, tears streaming down my face. I wiped them away aggressively before I turned to face the hallway. Greg was standing there, right behind me. "See?" he whispered, smiling. "Sleeping like an angel. He's exhausted. We did a lot of exercise today." "You're such a good dad," I said. The words tasted like ash in my mouth. "Thank you for taking care of him." Greg's smile widened. It reached his eyes this time. He believed me. He thought his mask was still perfectly in place. "Come on," he said, taking my hand. "Let's get you to bed." I'm going to tell you what I found in the trash can in a second. But if you are still here with me, holding your breath, please hit that subscribe button. Stick with me to the end to see how I finally found the strength to break the silence. We are in this together. I told Greg I needed water. I went downstairs to the kitchen while he went to our bedroom. The kitchen was spotless, the counters gleamed, but the smell of bleach was overpowering here. He had scrubbed the floor. Why? Had Leo thrown up from the stress? Had he bled? I walked over to the tall stainless steel trash can in the corner. I pressed the pedal. Right on top, sitting on a pile of coffee grounds, were the blue shreds. It was the sketchbook. I reached in, I didn't care about the garbage, and pulled out a crumpled ball of paper. I carefully unfolded it. It was the drawing of the dragon. The one Leo had been so proud of. It was torn into 4 pieces. Seeing that dragon torn and stained with coffee, something inside me shifted from fear to cold, strategic calculation. This wasn't just a bad husband. This was an enemy. And I was behind enemy lines. I put the paper in my pocket. Evidence. I saw Greg's keys sitting on the counter. The key to his truck, the key to my SUV, and the key to the front door deadbolt. Our front door was an old, heavy oak door with a double-cylinder deadbolt, meaning you needed a key to unlock it from the inside. Greg had installed it for security. Now I realized it wasn't to keep people out, it was to keep people in. I swiped the entire keychain and shoved it into my bra. I grabbed a bottle of water and walked back upstairs. When I entered our bedroom, Greg was already in bed, reading a book on Stoic philosophy. "Feeling better?" he asked, not looking up. "A little," I said. I changed into my pajamas in the dark. My hands were shaking so bad I couldn't button the top, so I just left it. I climbed into bed next to him. I lay there, staring at the ceiling fan spinning above us. Whir, whir, whir. "Good night, Elena," Greg said. He reached over and turned off the lamp. The room plunged into darkness. "Good night, Greg." I waited. I waited for his breathing to change. I waited for the heavy, rhythmic snore that meant he was deeply asleep. 10 minutes. 20 minutes. My heart was beating so loud I was sure he could hear it. Thump, thump. Thump, thump. Finally, his breathing slowed. A soft snore rattled in his throat. I didn't move yet. I counted to 500. Then, slowly, millimeter by millimeter, I slid my legs out from under the covers. I placed my feet on the carpet. No sound. I stood up. I grabbed my purse from the chair. I felt the cold metal of the keys against my skin. I crept into the hallway. The floorboard outside Leo's room always creaked, so I stepped over it, stepping wide like a dancer. I pushed Leo's door open. "Leo," I whispered, shaking his shoulder gently. "Baby, wake up. It's Mom. We're going on an adventure." Leo shot up, eyes wide, terrified. "Did I forget the timer?" he gasped. "No, no timer," I whispered, putting a finger to my lips. "We are leaving, right now. You don't need shoes, just come." He climbed out of bed, trusting me instantly. He grabbed my hand, his palm was sweaty. We walked down the stairs, the house was silent. We made it to the foyer. I pulled the keys out of my bra. My hands were slippery with sweat. I found the gold key for the deadbolt. I slid it into the lock. Click. It was the loudest sound I had ever heard. It sounded like a gunshot in the quiet house. I froze. Leo froze. We looked up at the top of the stairs, silence. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. I turned the knob. The door opened. The cool night air hit my face. Freedom. "Elena?" The voice came from right behind me. I spun around. Greg was standing at the bottom of the stairs. He wasn't asleep. He was wide awake. And he was holding Leo's blue sketchbook, the other half of it, in his hand. "Where do you think you're going with my son?" I looked at the open door, then back at my husband, and I realized with terrifying clarity that the only way out of this house wasn't through the door, it was through him. The air coming through the open front door was freezing, but I didn't feel cold. I felt a kind of heat I had never experienced before. It started in the soles of my feet and shot up my spine, straight into the base of my neck. Greg stood there at the bottom of the stairs, blocking the hallway light. He looked huge. He looked like every nightmare Leo had ever had. In his hand, he gripped the rest of the blue sketchbook, his knuckles white. "I asked you a question, Elena," he said. His voice was low, vibrating with a threat that only a spouse would recognize. "Where are you taking my son in the middle of the night?" Leo whimpered behind me. He tried to pull his hand away from mine, his instinct to surrender kicking in. "Mom, stop," he whispered, terrified. "We have to go back. I have to do the timer." That sentence, "I have to do the timer," was the fuel I needed. I stepped in front of Leo. I put my body between him and his father. I didn't step back. I didn't flinch. For 10 years, I had been the peacemaker. I had been the water to Greg's fire. Tonight, I was the rock. "He is done with the timers, Greg," I said. My voice didn't shake. I expected it to. I expected to be sobbing, screaming, begging, but I wasn't. My voice was deadly calm. It sounded like the voice of a stranger. Greg laughed. It was a dry, sharp sound. "You are having a breakdown," he said, taking a step toward us. "You're exhausted. You're hysterical. Close the door, Elena. You're letting the heat out." "Stay there," I commanded. He stopped, not because he was afraid, but because he was shocked. I had never given him an order in our entire marriage. "You think I'm crazy," I said, my eyes locking onto his. "You think I'm projecting. You think I'm the guilty, absent mother." "I think you need help," he said, putting on his concerned husband mask. "Look at you. You're shaking. You're dragging our son out into the cold. Come here. Let me—" I saw the tape, Greg. The silence that followed was heavy. It sucked the air out of the foyer. Greg's face didn't move, but his eyes flickered. The mask slipped just a fraction. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said, but his voice lacked its usual smooth confidence. "I saw the duct tape," I continued, pressing my advantage. "I saw the stress positions. I saw you rip up his drawings. I saw you time him while he cried." "You were spying on me?" he hissed. The concern was gone. The predator was back. "In my own house? That is illegal, Elena. That is—" "I don't care what it is," I cut him off. "I have it all. I recorded everything from the Furbo camera. The tearing, the insults, the pain as weakness speech." I took a step toward the door, pulling Leo with me. Greg took a step forward to block us. "You aren't leaving with him," he snarled. "He needs discipline. He's weak, just like you. I'm fixing him." "If you take one more step," I said, lifting my phone which I had clutched in my other hand, "I will hit send." He froze. "Send what?" "I have the video file queued up," I lied. Well, it wasn't a total lie. It was saved, but not ready to send. But he didn't know that. "I will send it to the police. I will send it to your mother. I will send it to every single one of your high-profile consulting clients. I will ruin your reputation before you can even get to the bottom of the driveway." Greg looked at the phone, then he looked at me. He was doing the math. He was a narcissist. He cared about control, yes, but he cared about his image more. He cared about being the perfect dad in the eyes of the world. "You wouldn't," he whispered. "You'd destroy this family." "You already destroyed it," I said. "I'm just taking the wreckage out of the house." I looked at the sketchbook in his hand. That blue book that used to be full of color, now torn and held by the man who hated it. "Keep the book," I said. He looked down at it, confused. "Keep it," I repeated. "It's the last thing of Leo's you will ever touch. You can look at it when you're alone in this big, empty house and remember why you lost him." I turned my back on him. That was the hardest part, turning my back on a monster, trusting that his vanity was stronger than his violence. "Walk, Leo," I whispered. "Don't run, just walk." We walked out onto the porch. I heard Greg breathing heavy behind us. I felt his rage burning into my back. But he didn't move. The threat of exposure, the threat of the world seeing who he really was, paralyzed him. We got to the car. I unlocked it with the fob. I buckled Leo into the back seat. My hands were steady, efficient. I got into the driver's seat and locked the doors. As I started the engine, I looked at the house one last time. Greg was standing in the doorway, framed by the light of the foyer. He looked small. He looked pathetic. A man who needed to torture a child to feel big. I put the car in reverse and backed out of the driveway. I didn't cry. I didn't look back again. As we turned the corner at the end of the street, leaving the perfect house behind, Leo spoke from the back seat. "Mom? Yeah, baby? Is the timer stopped?" I reached back and squeezed his knee. "Yeah, Leo, the timer is stopped. Forever." And that was the moment the adrenaline finally broke. I let out a breath that sounded like a sob. But it wasn't a sob of sadness. It was the sound of a chain breaking. Greg thought he had broken us. He thought he had silenced us. But he forgot one thing. You never, ever underestimate a mother who has finally seen the truth. We drove into the night, with nowhere to go but away. And for the first time in years, the silence in the car wasn't scary. It was peaceful. I thought the hardest part was over, but as I merged onto the highway, my phone lit up with a notification that made my blood run cold. Greg wasn't just staying home. He was already making his next move. That notification on my phone as we drove away that night, it was a fraud alert. Greg had tried to empty our joint savings account 5 minutes after I walked out the door. He tried to cut off my resources, to starve me back into submission. He thought that without money, I would turn the car around. He thought that without his empire, I would crumble. He was wrong. I drove straight to my sister's house. And the next morning, I didn't go to the bank. I went to a lawyer. The battle that followed wasn't pretty. I won't lie to you and say the justice system is perfect. It's not. Greg walked into that courtroom wearing his best suit, armed with expensive lawyers and his perfect father smile. He tried to paint me as the hysterical, career-obsessed woman who abandoned her family. He tried to say the video I took was taken out of context. But you can't contextualize torture. When the judge saw the footage, when she heard the sound of that duct tape ripping and the cold, dead way Greg spoke to our weeping son, the room went silent. The charm didn't work. The suit didn't work. The truth, raw and undeniable, was the only thing that mattered. Greg lost. He lost full custody. He was granted 0 visitation rights until he completed a year of court-mandated psychiatric intervention, which, to this day, his ego hasn't allowed him to do. But this chapter isn't about him. He is the past. He is a shadow we left behind in that cold, perfect house. This chapter is about us. It has been 2 years since the night I trusted my gut and walked out that door. Our lives look very different now. We don't live in a mansion anymore. We live in a modest 2-bedroom townhouse with creaky floors and a small patch of garden. I don't sell luxury penthouses anymore. I work as an office manager at a local school, so I can be home every single day at 3 p.m. when Leo gets out. We don't have a lot of money, but we have something worth so much more. We have noise. Our house is loud. We play music while we cook. We laugh until our stomachs hurt. If Leo drops a glass, we don't freeze. We yell, "Oppa!" and we clean it up together. We have retrained our nervous systems to know that mistakes are not dangerous. And Leo is 9 years old now. He's taller. His shoulders don't hunch up toward his ears anymore. He plays soccer on weekends, and he has a group of friends who come over and make a mess in the living room. But the biggest change is in the sketchbook. For the first 6 months after we left, Leo didn't draw. He wouldn't touch a pencil. He was too afraid. But slowly, with the help of an incredible therapist, he started to pick it up again. Yesterday, I was cleaning up his room, and I found his new sketchbook lying open on his desk. It wasn't hidden under the bed. It was out in the open, proud and visible. I looked at the page he was working on. It was a drawing of us, me and him, sitting on our porch. But this time, it wasn't done in black charcoal. It was an explosion of color. Bright yellow sun, green grass, my blue dress. And the most important detail? He had drawn our faces. Big, wide, toothy smiles. We had mouths. We had voices. I stood there holding that book, and I cried. Not tears of grief, but tears of victory. That drawing was proof that the monster didn't win. He didn't break my son's spirit, he just bruised it, and bruises heal. I look back at the woman I was in Chapter 1, the woman who felt a knot in her stomach and almost ignored it because she didn't want to cause a scene. I want to hug her. I want to tell her that she isn't crazy. And that is what I want to tell you today. To the mothers, the wives, the women listening to this. Your intuition is your superpower. It is a biological alarm system designed to protect you and your pack. If you feel a knot in your stomach when you walk through your front door, listen to it. If your child flinches when they shouldn't, pay attention. If the silence in your home feels heavy, break it. Don't let anyone, no matter how charming, how rich, or how perfect they seem, talk you out of your own reality. You are the only line of defense your children have. And as long as you are willing to face the truth, there is nothing you cannot overcome. We are safe, we are happy, and most importantly, we are free. If this story touched your heart, please hit the like button to bring a little sunshine to this mama's heart. It helps more than you know. And please, subscribe to the Jessica Stories Vault channel right now so you don't miss the next life story. I want us to build a circle of protection here, a place where no woman feels alone. Tell me in the comments, where are you watching this video from and what time is it there right now? It makes me really happy to know which corner of the country or the world is listening to me and that we are connected across time zones. And I have one last question for you. Which part of my story felt closest to your own life? Was it the gut feeling, the fear of leaving, or the relief of finally being safe? Let's meet in the comments and support each other. If you loved this story and want to support the channel further, you can click on the link in the channel description and follow through to send in your support. It allows me to keep bringing these stories to light. Thank you so much for your sweet support. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. Stories of women finding their strength just like I did. See you in the next life story, with love and respect.